good morning. I grew up loving Dr. Seuss, but I was always kind of bothered by the Cat in the Hat. I'm not sure why exactly, but basically here's what happens. The kids are bored at home, but are living an orderly life, when mom was leaving on a rainy day. Then the Cat in the Hat comes and chaos ensues, and the fish warns the kids not to allow the Cat in the Hat into their lives. But he comes in anyway, and he unleashes disorder, with thing 1 and thing 2. And now the house is a complete mess. Mom is coming home, and the Cat in the Hat is pushed out because of all of his disorder. Then, the Cat in the Hat comes back with a giant machine that reorders their house, just before the mom is home. I guess I was too much of a let's not get in trouble and let's obey kid to appreciate the story when I was younger. Sadly, I was cheering for the fish that said, "Don't let him in." Which is weird because I should identify with the Cat in the Hat. He was a juggler, the bouncer, the entertainer, and myself as a musician, I can kind of understand where he's coming from. What I realized as I read this story is that many of us feel the same way about God. We are living a life with order. We have success, our ducks in a row, and we're doing, well, good things. And we have done well without quote-unquote God in our life, or quote-unquote Jesus in our heart. An idea of making church or God of something of real substance, well, we all have a fish in our heart crying out, "Don't let God here, he'll mess up everything." Sometimes our fish spouts out intellectual doubts. What about those who have never heard about God? What about the problem of evil? But usually the fish talks about more personal issues. If God comes into our life, what will he ask me to do, to give up, to change? Well, I just gotta keep him out, because we don't like disorder. However, we have lived with disorder the last few months, and currently with current events, we kind of feel like everything right now is disorder. And as things start to reopen up, we need to reorder. But what are we reordering around right now? And some people think this is just some type of superstition or a belief in something that really doesn't have any justification. But deep down inside, I think we wonder for wonder. We wonder if there's more to life than accumulation. We wonder if we were made for something more. We wonder what happens when we die. We wonder why is there evil in the world. We wonder why love stories have a similar storyline, order, disorder, and reorder. And we go back to them again and again, as if we want that same storyline for ourselves. So today we're going to look at the 3 stages: order, disorder, and reorder. Every family, every season, every time you want to make a significant change for the good of whether you're working, for school, for the team you're on, you have to go through these 3 stages, the status quo. The first is unsettled order. So the Cat in the Hat comes into your life. The opening to Cat in the Hat speaks to a group of kids who have lots to do, but they are bored too. We are introduced to their closets, homes, hobbies, but they are unfulfilled. Their lives are ordered and boring. 2 guys that we're going to kind of represent this today are Paul and Agrippa. They had it all: fame, power, intellect. They went to the best schools, they were household names in their time and community, and yet they sensed something was missing. Paul is going to tell his story from order to disorder to reorder to a king, a prominent man who is an expert lawyer, philosopher, and historian, who walks into a room with great pomp. And Paul basically says, "I had a boringly successful, ordinary life." Here's Galatians 3. Now Paul will note that he was advanced, beat out his competitors, more passion, he had more drive, more zealousness than anyone. In fact, he thought Jesus was the Cat in the Hat. He thought he was the troublemaker, a problem. And Paul set out to destroy this troublemaking Jesus. He saw Jesus the way the fish saw the Cat in the Hat. A troublemaker who was bringing wonder to others, speaking of defeating death, upsetting religious systems of order, and challenging people to love their enemies. This was upsetting the order. So what does the fish say to you? Are you living a boringly orderly life? Has all of our order brought us a deeper meaning about the purpose of our life? Who made us to be who? Do we really know why we are here to do what? Or has the fish of doubt told us the belief in Jesus is problematic? Or don't consider God, because he will mess up your heart, sinner, house. When God comes into your life, he does bring a wonderful disorder to it. He unleashes his box of things that come into your life: peace, joy, love, desire to sacrifice, give, serve, and please God. Now, these things might initially seem weird, blue-headed monsters, but soon you find they bring meaning and purpose to your life, and the order you had is not something you want to return to. Interestingly, Paul says the same kind of thing to Agrippa. I love this intro by Paul: leader to leader, thinker to thinker, philosopher to philosopher, successfully busy man to busy man. Paul says, while thus occupied in my orderly life, suddenly the cat in the hat brought disorder into my life. The amount of chaos God just brought into Paul's life. He is knocked on the ground. He is blinded for a time. He must rethink his life. He sees what he thought was good. Prosecuting Jesus is actually bad. What he thought was religious and God-pleasing was actually persecuting the God he thought he was served. This is a major paradigm shift. And God asked him to go be a witness, a proclaimer of a very message that he was trying to destroy and reach out to people unlike him, Gentiles, challenging his Jewish prejudice that God only cared about the Jews. This is what's amazing about this kind of creative disorder that God does into your heart. Paul was religious, but now he has a relationship with God. God and he are talking, interacting, challenging, and conversing with one another. You know they've gone through this creative disorder when you move from being religious to being in love with God. That seems like a weird phrase, to be in love with God. That's how you know you're a real follower of Christ. You love God, not just respect him. You know he might exist. That's the journey that Paul is on, and always takes you from order to disorder and into reorder. So creative reorder is kind of the cat's reordering machine. Then in the book, when we think the cat in the hat has left the house in disarray, but then he re-enters with helping hands machine and reorders the inside of the house. And this is what happens when God comes into your life. You don't just become more religious, usually you become less. You don't become more judgmental, you become more gracious. You don't become more judgmental, you become more gracious. But you also don't become naive either. You're able to critique without being overly critical, judge without being judgmental, and your whole life is reordered to tell others about a God who has changed you in ways that you would never have wanted initially, but now can't imagine living without. You begin to imagine seeing your whole life, your relationships, your friends, your family, and wherever your college career or high school career takes a new tone and a new focus and new surprises. You're able to look back at times in life when you thought you were others focused and say, well, I was kind of selfish and I focused on me. Now I want to do what I do, focused on God and others. Paul tells Agrippa that God reordered his life. When you and I read Gentiles, nothing really strikes us about that, right? But when it says Gentiles, he is saying his whole priority is being restructured. The Gentiles were the enemies of the Jewish people in some sectors. So much so that much philosophical, religious, and historic debates occurred whether it was even appropriate for a Gentile to be too involved in the Jewish religion. So there are three things that are reordered in Paul. One, he cares about people he didn't used to, and he's willing to sacrifice for them. He now believes the Bible, its teaching, and he'll be a suffering Messiah. And finally, he believes that Christ would rise from the dead to bring life to all people. This is a wonder worthy wondering about. This isn't just be a little bit better of a person, but a wonderful reordering of life. This is exactly what Paul is saying. He will risk his life, be stoned, shipwrecked, and almost killed to bring the message of hope to his neighbors, his friends who oppose him, his God, and his message. I love this reaction from Festus and Agrippa. You are crazy. You are losing your mind. And Paul gives a rational response. No, I'm not. I'm using words, reason, and truth. And I know you know these things are true. They are based in evidence, and they didn't happen in a corner. He says to a king, go check it out. There are eyewitnesses living in his resurrection, his life, death, and rebirth. Check out the predictions of the prophets and see if Jesus fulfilled them. Then he turns to Agrippa and says, do you believe? And Agrippa says, you almost persuaded me to become a Christ follower. Paul's reordering, Paul's life change, Paul's conviction, lack of a fear of death, and ability to communicate the message was the nudging that Agrippa needed to consider the faith. That is what we as a church are all about. We want to help people wonder for the wonder of God, and to find it through the process of order, disorder, and reorder. Because when it comes down to it, we all wonder for the wonder of God. One of the key indicators to this reordering of your life is a belief in your heart to say success is to bless. You start reordering your life to the wonder of God. How? Instead of demanding your rights, needing to be the focus of attention, needing to take credit or get your own way, you really in your heart start to think and live out the idea that success is to bless. Our ability to bless others in such a custom way is really what makes Horizon Horizon. That's what Horizon's about. Each of us went through or is thinking about that process, which is to wonder about the wonder of God. And we wonder for wonder. We have the order and disorder and then the reorder. Now we get to see that success is bless. Because we can rewrite our stories if we reorder ourselves around God.
You know I want you. It's not a secret I try to hide. I know you want me. So don't keep saying our hands are tied. You claim it's not in the cards, and fate is pulling you miles away and out of reach from me. But you're here in my heart, so who can stop me if I decide that you're my destiny? And what if we rewrite the stars, that you were made to be mine? Nothing could keep us apart. You'd be the one I was meant to find. It's up to you, and it's up to me. No one can say what we need to be. So why don't we rewrite the stars? Maybe the world could be ours tonight.
You think it's easy. You think I don't want to run to you. But there are mountains, and there are doors that we can't walk through. I know you're wondering why, because we're able to be just you and me within these walls. But when we go outside, you're gonna wake up and see that it was hopeless after all. No one can rewrite the stars. How can you say you'll be mine? Everything keeps us apart, and I'm not the one you were meant to find. It's not up to you, it's not up to me. When everyone tells us what we can be, how can we rewrite the stars? Say that the world can be ours tonight.
All I want is to fly with you. All I want is to fall with you. So just give me all of you.
It feels
It's not impossible. Say that it's possible. How do we rewrite the stars? Say you were made to be mine. Nothing can keep us apart, 'cause you are the one I was meant to find. It's up to you, and it's up to me. No one can say what we get to be. And why don't we rewrite the stars, changing the world to be ours?
You know I want you. It's not a secret I tried to hide, but I can't have you. We're bound to break and my hands are tied.